Um,
Whoop. Lost you there for a minute.
all right. Don't know what's going on with the time, but how's it going, my Comic Chat Army? We're here with Alin Silverwood. He currently has a Kickstarter. He worked for Marvel. He has a lot of great accomplishments. How you doing, Alin?
I'm doing okay. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. So tell us about your Kickstarter that's coming out.
Okay. Well, the Kickstarter that I've got is on pre-launch right now. It's for something called Spies Among Us, and that SPI stands for Superpowered Individuals. And the reason it's called Spies Among Us is because what happens in my world is superpowered individuals have been living among us secretly for as long as mankind has been around. That's why you have mythology and extraordinary people. Certain people are actual superpowered individuals. It was kept secret. And then with the invention of mass communications in modern times, there were more and more spies. And as there became more and more spies, there was the rise of a man named Dr. Anonymous, who did this thing that kept them a secret. Like whenever there was a big kerfluffle with a bunch of spies, would destroy buildings, kill people, whatever, he would come in and he would make it all unhappen. Just kind of like magically, just like it never happened. The only people who would remember it would be spies. Like mass media would be like, if it was filmed or taped, it all disappears. So this guy was totally keeping them hidden among us. Wow. And then one day he disappears, and all of a sudden they come out, and they're expecting to be, Dr. Anonymous will come out and he'll cover us up and keep us hidden, so we can remain hidden and anonymous. And then one day he doesn't show up, and the world finds out that they exist, and everything, and that shit hits the fan. Basically, everything goes a little bit crazy. So there's all this stuff, and they're basically trying to find Dr. Anonymous. Some of the guys are trying to find Dr. Anonymous. Some people are trying to take advantage of the situation. All of these factions are forming. Basically, I'm dropping you in the middle of chaos. You drop right in the middle of the chaos at the beginning of the story, and then we're going to kind of unravel who these people are and why they're involved and what happened to Dr. Anonymous. And then, of course, it gets crazier from there. But
how many pages is the first issue? Is it the normal?
30 pages.
All right, and how many issues is going to be in this total arc?
The first story arc, I'm counting on about 8 issues, and I've got the first 2 done. So, they'll be ahead. It's like I won't be offering you a book that you'll have to wait months to have done. I will have it done by the time I offer it on Kickstarter. Like this book, the first issue, is done. All I have to do is basically do the back page once I have, backers that I want to put it, what I'm calling the Hall of Gratitude, on the inside of the back page. It's like once I have that, we do that, that book is done and ready to ship. And then, of course, as far as like tiers and rewards and stuff, those will have to be created, but I got that all lined up too. So, you'll be getting it pretty fast once you get the book. And I think, you're going to want to follow this all the way through to the end of the story, because it's a mystery and you're going to want to know the answer. It's like, where is Dr. Anonymous? What happened? How was this guy keeping them hidden? What was he doing? What's his power? And it's different. It's a unique thing. I don't think anybody's ever quite touched on. It's a little bit different. So I think people are going to be blown away by the realization of what he's been doing.
Yeah, it sounds very unique. What time period is the book set in?
It starts in 2012, and there's a reason for that. It ties into the whole storyline. That's actually kind of a big hint that it starts in 2012, but it starts in 2012. It's set in 2012, and then, obviously if things roll forward, then it'll keep moving forward too. But that's where we initially come in, is 2012, summer of 2012.
All right. Is there going to be like spin-offs and spin-offs for the characters?
I got a lot of really interesting characters, and like I said, a lot of them have been developing in my mind for many years. There are some characters that people are really kind of glomming onto. They get a real interest in them, and I'm like, why not? If people want it, if they want to see it, I'll do some of that for sure. We can put some spin-offs out there. I definitely would like to do some one-shots with one of these guys, one or two of these guys at least. Definitely going to do a source book. That's probably going to be maybe a stretch goal or something, but even if it isn't, we're going to do a source book, because I love those things. And I think it's pretty interesting when you have a lot of characters, which we do. There's a lot of characters here. And so it's kind of fun for people to flip through and go, oh, this is the guy who did that, and he did what? Oh, and there's some backstory on him, because there's some stuff. You can't put it all in 32 pages. I'm not going to be able to everybody I introduce, I'm not going to be able to give you their origin story. And it's kind of like in real life. I always think about this when I'm reading comic books. It's like they'll drop a character in and you get this origin story, and it kind of goes on, and you're like, I kind of didn't really need to know that for the story that's happening right now. It's like, you could give me that origin story later. You know, I'll want to know more about it later and come back to that. So I'm kind of like doing that. I'm dropping characters in, and I give you little hints so you see inside of their personality so you know who they are. But as far as where they came from and origins and stuff, that stuff's going to come later. That'll have to evolve as the story evolves, which I think is a little bit of a different approach too. So.
And this is your first solo comic ever?
This is my first of my original creations to come out. I have another thing that's in the works, the steampunk thing, but that one has been taking a lot longer. It is really hard to get people to draw steampunk.
Right.
But yeah, so that was actually supposed to be first, but this one's actually gotten done first because, superheroes. Everybody draws superheroes. It's a lot easier to find somebody to get a superhero book done.
All right, and I know you worked at Marvel.
Yes.
Could you tell us? And you worked with Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
I was the Incredible Hulk, She-Hulk.
Yeah. I was there on staff, and I worked under the name of Gary Barnum. You won't find me under the name of Alan Silverwood. My middle name is Alan. My last name was something my father took. It's a long story, but Silverwood is like a family name for my mother. No long stories, but. But Gary Barnum, you'll find, I did a little bit of writing. I wrote some short stories for them, but I was on the Incredible Hulk, Ghost Rider, G.I. Joe, She-Hulk, something called The Nth Man that maybe people remember or not. Larry Hama wrote. It was pretty interesting stuff. And then a few, different little individual projects. And I wrote some short stories. I was really happy with it at the time is because I had moved to New York from Los Angeles, and I always thought, man, why don't you guys have somebody from the West Coast writing the West Coast Avengers? And that's back when they had the first West Coast Avengers. So one of the first things they gave me to do as a writing project was a backup in a West Coast Avengers annual, and I was over the moon because I got to write Hawkeye, which was my thing. I liked the Archer characters, Green Arrow and Hawkeye. It was like, give me the Archer characters. There's a guy named The Point in The Spies Among Us. He comes in the second issue, so I've got obviously to have an Archer character. But yeah, when I went to work for Marvel, I was working as the assistant editor for Bobby Chase, and I worked with the run on the Incredible Hulk where we got the handsome Hulk that shows up in the last Avengers movie in Endgame. He's smart, but he's the Hulk. It's like that storyline that Peter David did with Dale Keown. I was working as the assistant editor on that storyline when that happened. We did that storyline when Doc Samson, kind of basically shrank Bruce Banner, did psychotherapy on him, and we got Smart Hulk. So I worked on that. I worked on the introduction of the new Ghost Rider when Danny Ketch came out. That was the first time he was reintroduced. And then I worked on the She-Hulk stretch with Steve Gerber and Brian Hitch, which was fun. I mean, we had different guest artists doing covers for that. One of the times that it's kind of funny, Brian Boland was on the phone with me. The artist Brian Boland, he was on the phone with me and he was trying to do a cover for us. And there was something called the Baloneyverse that Steve Gerber came up with for the She-Hulk story with Howard the Duck. And Brian Boland was trying to do the cover, and he was trying to ask, how do you draw bologna? What does bologna look like? And I'm like, don't you guys have bologna in England? And he was kind of, I don't know if he was, I've never known if he was having me on or if he really just didn't know. So here I am on the phone trying to describe bologna to Brian Boland.
That's interesting. I don't know if I could explain bologna to someone myself.
It's hard, it really is hard. I'm like, how do you describe it? It's kind of like salami, but it's not chunky. It's all kind of smooth.
Right.
It was one of those funny things. It was funny working on staff at Marvel Comics. I mean, chasing each other up and down the halls with water pistols. We would work sometimes really late in the night, at midnight sometimes, and we'd go out. It's the end of the day. It's like we'd go out for dinner and drinks and then come back to work and still be working. I remember Mark Texera, who worked on Ghost Rider with us at the time, he would have to do a lot of inking work. And his whole style of inking at that time was one hand had whiteout and the other hand had the ink pen. And he would be whiting out and inking. And that's how he would be doing that. And I'd find him standing there in the bullpen like at 11:30 at night still working on pages of Ghost Rider with whiteout ink. And it'd be like all over him. And he's trying to do these pages and get them out so he can make the deadlines. Mm. It was crazy days. It was definitely a time. Disney didn't own them then, it was a long time ago.
Right. It definitely sounds fun. What's your reasons for leaving Marvel?
Oh man. Well, here's the thing. I was like 24 at the time, 24, 25, and when I moved to New York, I was married. And by the time I left New York, I was divorced. But I was reconciling. So there was a lot of personal stuff going on in my life at the time. And I also kind of found that, like, one thing I have found is that I've been self-employed for several years now as a writer, for a lot of other things. But what I found was I had a hard time staying on staff anywhere. I didn't fit really well into corporate culture, even if it was fun, loose corporate culture, which Marvel was a little bit more. I was a little bit less tolerant, and I was young, so I was having some hard times kind of. Plus, I was in New York. I was far from home. I was just a kid. I had never really been that far from home. Both of my parents died when I was 20, so I was kind of an orphan, you know. And here I was all the way in New York. I had no family. I had a lot of friends I had made in New York really fast. People in New York are super cool. So I was kind of like, I'm homesick. I've got this relationship thing I'm trying to figure out. I'm not really sure I'm as happy on staff here as I thought I would be. It's like, and so there was kind of a lot of things going on. It was kind of a conglomerate of things. And I was kind of like, one day I was just kind of like, you know what, I think I need to go home. And so I just, basically kind of went home. It's a little bit of a crash and burn, but, had my time though.
Right. So did Stan Lee, was he around a lot? Did he just periodically pop in?
He was based in LA at that time, so he would come periodically and he would pop through the office, and that was always kind of a special thing. And you'd try to get up and say hello to him and stuff like that, but he was usually pretty busy, and he would be in and then he would be out again. He didn't just come in and there was an office sitting there for him that he'd come in and take over and sit down for a while. He would just come through and then be back out. And he was working on stuff. Actually, one of the projects that I worked on was a Silver Surfer graphic novel that he wrote, and that was one of the projects that we did, but I didn't actually work with him on that part of the book. Unfortunately, I would have loved to have said I worked with Stan Lee on a project, but I didn't actually. I worked on the book, but it was after Stan Lee's part was done. So it was but that was cool. Yeah, he was around a bit. The people that would come through there, though, your jaws would drop. It's like we had guys coming through there. Peter David was sitting in our office all the time. Larry Hama, who was amazing. They were great. Peter David, I'll tell you some funny stories. Peter David was always trying to put in, how they have the sound effects. He was always trying to slip things in there, and I had to kind of watch for these things as I'm proofreading his stuff. It's like, what are you doing here, Peter? And it would be like, for an explosion sound, he wanted to put in BA-bathroom. And I'm like, you're trying to slip bathroom in there as a sound effect. He would be doing stuff like that. I'm like, cut that out. It was fun. They were crazy.
Has any ever made it through?
Huh?
Has any of them ever made it through?
Oh, any of the stuff that he was doing?
Yeah, how you said he was called bathroom. Did you ever just let's push this through?
I bet it did, because I don't think he gave up. He was a lot of fun. It's funny because I wound up when I left Marvel Comics, I went back to LA and wound up working in Hollywood at Paramount Pictures. So I like to say I went to Hollywood before Marvel did. But while I was working in Hollywood, I was at a small studio before I went to Paramount, and Peter David came walking in one day, and I'm like, Peter David, what are you doing here? And he's like, Gary Barnum, what are you doing here? It was funny. There's this whole thing about why are we both here? It's like, so he was working on a comic for this small studio, or they were trying to get him to work on it, and so we ran into each other later. It's a small world.
Oh yeah. So what other writing have you done besides outside of the comic book world?
Well, let's see. I wrote some comic stuff. I've written some short stories. I've got a book of short stories. They're kind of Twilight Zone-y. I'll show it to you. It's like if you like Twilight Zone type of stuff, which I always love Twilight Zone.
Oh, yeah.
They're kind of creepy. They're a little bit weird and off. I've written an epic fantasy novel. I can't hold it up to you, but it's on my website. An epic fantasy novel, working on the second one of that. I actually wrote a Pulp Fiction style version of the first issue of Spies Among Us, which I have written. And it's just a novella, kind of just of the first issue. And I figure I'll just keep doing those too, because they're kind of fun and easy to write. It's like, just do this, just kind of old pulp style fiction writing of novels. Most of the writing I've done has been articles, pop culture articles and stuff. I've been writing for Hot Wheels for almost 20 years. for adult Hot Wheel collectors. And yeah, so I do a lot of Hot Wheels stuff. I'm like,
Yeah, explain that.
I've even got my name on. There's even several Hot Wheels with my name on them. Out there. There's a few that have my name on them.
Oh, wow.
It's a website for people who collect Hot Wheels, and it's like Hot Wheels ties into everything. I mean, now Hot Wheels does stuff based on Marvel characters. They do stuff based on Disney characters. They do stuff based on Star Wars characters. So I've been writing about all of that, plus their regular stuff. And doing some research with the guys who design Hot Wheels and stuff and all that cool stuff. So I've been doing a lot of that kind of stuff for almost 20 years now.
Wow. Yeah, you've got a very interesting life. You've done a lot of great things, a lot of cool things.
My brother-in-law teases me. He says, "You've never had to grow up. You worked for a comic book company, you worked for a movie studio, and you worked for a toy company. He's like, you've never had to grow up." And I'm like, why would I?
Right. Yeah, we've got a couple more minutes. Tell us what you did at the movie studio, Paramount Pictures. Did you write scripts for movies?
I was working in the home video division, and I worked on the marketing and the theatrical. Not the theatrical, but the marketing releases of the videos. I was there during Forrest Gump, Titanic, Braveheart, things like that. So it was there working on some of those campaigns, on those things, marketing materials, packaging, things like that. Some big movies, some small movies. We also were doing like Star Trek. We were doing the Star Trek releases. That was back when they had VHS, so we had a lot of VHS. At that time, DVD was just coming in. It was kind of like the crossover, so we were doing a little bit of both. But yeah, so I worked there for a while. It was fun. That was surreal, walking around the studios. So I remember standing in line behind a guy. He's ordering a tuna sandwich, and it's a Klingon. It's like I'm in line for a guy ordering a tuna sandwich, and it's a Klingon. There was a Ferengi. Star Trek guys were always. I stood on the bridge of the USS Enterprise. Stood in the telephone room too. I mean, I've been there. It was pretty cool walking around the lot, being on some of the sets and stuff. Those are crazy days. Hollywood's crazy. You really want?
Still have pictures?
I might have some pictures somewhere about that stuff. I don't know where they'd be. I never like pictures. I always try to stay out of the camera. It's like you see my family pictures and they're like, where's he at? Where is he? It's like, oh, you see that guy in the back? He's not smiling. I never smile either. It's like, that guy in the back. Oh yeah, there he is. You can almost see him. Now I always try to stay out of pictures, so I don't have a lot. It's like, it's really funny. I worked, the whole time I was in New York and living in New York, working at Marvel. I don't have a lot of pictures from that time, and now I'm like, I wish I did, Right. But I didn't take a lot of pictures. I have a few. Sometimes other people have pictures. It's like, oh yeah, something will come to me, and it'll be like, oh yeah, ooh, I look terrible. I don't like my pictures.
Right. Do you still have any of your old books from back in the day?
All of the stuff that I worked on at Marvel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have everything. I have everything I worked on. I did a lot of the dossiers in the back of the G.I. Joes they did for a while. They didn't credit me. You didn't get credit for them. They did these dossiers of the G.I. Joe characters, and Larry Hama wrote the first couple of them. Like he did Snake Eyes, and I think he did like Storm Shadow and maybe one more. And then after that, I did all of those dossiers, and it's like I never got credit for it, and I wrote like all of those guys after that, So I was doing a lot of stuff, but so I kept all of that. I've got a box full of what I call, it's kind of like my archives. I got all of that stuff, everything that I assistant edited, everything that I've written for everybody. I've got it all.
Right. All right. Well, that's all the time we got for now, Alan. Do you have any shout outs or anything you want to tell the people that we didn't get a chance to touch on?
No, I mean, just it's really cool to check out Spies Among Us. I think you'll really like it. I call it an epic superhero mystery. It's on pre-launch right now on Kickstarter, so you can kind of like sign up for it. It launches on July 25th, and basically it's some very interesting characters. Some of them are kind of quirky. Some of them are new. Some of them are definitely, I mean, they're all original characters some of them I've had for a long time. Some of them I've had for, when I say new, some of them I've come up with more recently. Some of them I've been, working on for years in my head. This world has been alive for years, so it's worth checking out. And it'll be a lot of fun. People who follow the story will be glad they did.
All right. Well, thank you, Alan, for taking the time to come and talk with us.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yep, it's not a problem. Yeah, so stop recording. What? All right, well,
Did we
thank
lose
you,
it?
Alan. Let me. Yeah, it says stop recording. It's. Let me see. Yeah, I mean it should be on it. It's gonna pop up in a minute, so I can grab it. But thank you for coming on. I mean.